If Where Winds Meet left you craving that same rush of total freedom, you aren't alone. We've been obsessed with finding that next fix. These 5 games let you live that martial arts fantasy right now, and honestly, one of them might even do the combat better. No fluff, no filler. If you're ready for more Wuxia mastery, we've got you covered. First up, this one is for the true wanderers. You get to experience world with no boundaries. Matchless Kungfu is an absolute trip. It looks like a living Chinese painting, but underneath that art style is a sandbox that is surprisingly deep. It's less about following a script and more about just living in the world. Much like Where Winds Meet, this game shares a deep love for the genre. You get a massive world and a meridian system that feels incredibly rewarding to master. It even has the gift of gab for verbal duels. It reminds us of those emergent stories that made WWM so charming. And look, we have to ask, can the monkeys and winds do actual kung fu? Because here, they absolutely can. It's a bit blockier and more stylized than WWM, but for us, the freedom to be a total weirdo while mastering the blade makes this an indie gem you can't ignore. Next, we're trading the sword for the staff in what is easily the most visually stunning game we've played in years. Black Myth Wukong is just breathtaking. You're the destined one, caught in a world of gods and demons that feels alive. It captures those edge-of-your-seat boss encounters from Where Winds Meet and just cranks the intensity to 11. The animations are so fluid it's almost hypnotic. Every time you use a supernatural ability to outplay a boss, it hits that same dopamine button as a perfect duel in WWM. Now, it's more focused. You won't find 1,000 side activities here, but the high-intensity, legendary encounters make it an absolute must-play for anyone who loved the lore and the scale of winds. What if Where Winds Meet had a dark, supernatural twin? That's exactly the vibe of Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Set in the late Ming Dynasty, this is a dark fantasy that isn't afraid to get creepy. It keeps that beautiful traditional architecture we love, but adds a layer of Souls-like tension that honestly kept us on edge the whole time. The parry system is incredibly tight. It's that same Clash of Steel feeling, just in a world that feels a lot more like a nightmare. It's punishing, it's gritty, and it's way darker than WWM, but if you wanted the combat to be more of a challenge, this needs to be on your radar. Now, let's talk about the absolute peak of movement and the game that we honestly can't stop talking about in the office. If your favorite part of Where Winds Meet was sprinting up walls, dashing across water, and using that grappling hook to fly across rooftops, then Naraka Bladepoint is your masterclass. This isn't just a game, it's a high-speed chess match played with steel. We've spent way too much time in the practice range just perfecting the rock, paper, scissors combat loop. That's the white, blue, and red attacks for those who know. The parry and punish rhythm here is arguably the most polished and satisfying in the entire genre. When you land a parry against a massive greatsword and follow up with a devastating combo, the feeling is unmatched. It takes that verticality we loved in WWM and weaponizes it. You aren't just exploring a world, you're hunting in it. But here's the big shift, and where the highs and lows really hit, it's primarily multiplayer. You aren't just fighting predictable AI script, you are testing your Wuxia skills against another human players who are just as fast, just as hungry, and just as flashy as you are. It can be brutal. Losing a 15-minute match in 3 seconds because you mistimed a dash is a low that stings. But coming back, grabbing a legendary katana, and clearing a room? That's a high you won't find anywhere else. If you're here for the fast, flashy combat, and you want to prove that all those hours in Where Winds Meet actually turned you into a master, Naraka is where you go to prove it. Plus, their Showdown campaign mode offers that PvE boss slaying itch if you aren't feeling the Battle Royale heat. It's deep, it's fast, and it's beautiful. Finally, we have to talk about the game that makes everything else look like it's moving in slow motion. Phantom Blade Zero. Every time we see new footage of this Kung Fu Punk world, we honestly lose our minds. It mixes this dark steampunk aesthetic with traditional Chinese martial arts in a way that sounds like it shouldn't work, but on screen, it's pure poetry. You play as Soul, an elite assassin with only 66 days left to live, and that ticking clock creates this sense of desperation and speed that is baked into every animation. The cinematic flow of the combat is the closest thing we've ever seen to a high-budget choreographed Wuxia movie. It's fast, like terrifyingly fast. They use flicker-style animations that make your character feel like a god-tier master from the very first button press. While Where Winds Meet gave us a massive sandbox to play in, Phantom Blade Zero gives us a razor-sharp, semi-open world where every encounter feels like a masterpiece of motion. We've been dissecting the trailers and the weapon variety is insane, from heavy axes to dual blades that move like a blur. It hits that high of feeling invincible, but the low comes from the sheer atmospheric dread of the world. It's edgy, and it moves with a rapid-fire rhythm that makes WWM feel like a leisurely stroll in the park. If you wanted the rule of cool turned up to 100, and you want to see just how far the genre can be pushed technically, this is the future. It's the game we are most excited to see evolve, and honestly, it might set a new bar for what we expect from action RPGs. The era of the Wanderer is really just beginning, and honestly, looking at these 5 games, we couldn't be more excited about where this genre is heading. It's a great time to be a fan of Wuxia and high-action RPGs. We remember a time when these kinds of games were rare. But now, the choices are incredible. Whether you want the deep, systemic sandbox of Matchless Kungfu, the epic boss slaying of Wukong, the dark challenge of Wuchang, the competitive rush of Naraka, or the pure cinematic adrenaline of Phantom Blade Zero, the fantasy doesn't have to end just because you finished Where Winds Meet. We want to hear from you though. Which of these worlds is calling out to you? Are you looking for that peaceful, if slightly goofy, life of a martial arts monk? Or are you ready to dive into the dark, punishing world of a Kung Fu Punk assassin? We'll be down in the comments chatting about our favorite builds and which bosses gave us the most trouble. So don't be a stranger. This community is what makes these games special, and we're just happy to be a part of the journey with you. Hit that subscribe button if you want to stay updated on everything Wuxia, and we will see you in the next world. Stay legendary, Wanderers.